Eat, Sleep, Race podcast, Brian ESR, Hugo ESR, and our special guest today, 24-year-old NASCAR driver Joe Graf Jr., based from New Jersey, right? Actually, born and raised in Jersey, right?
Born and raised in Jersey. Yeah, grew up right in Mawa, so super happy to be back in Jersey for this.
That's what's up. Actually, I got to ask, are there any other NASCAR drivers in the history from Jersey?
Yeah, so there is. So Martin Truex is from Jersey. I think there's another one or two, but I'm not 100% sure. But
not too many NASCAR drivers from the Northeast, huh?
No, there's not a ton of them. I mean, a lot of them from North Carolina, a lot of them from California too, Southeast. But I think there's only been a few from Jersey.
So that actually segues into our first question. Are you the first racer driver in your family?
So I am not the first racer in my family. I'm the first NASCAR driver in my family, but my dad raced locally growing up, so I always grew up going to the racetrack, going to short tracks, Bethel Motor Speedway here in New York. It's about an hour from where I lived in Mawa, and then my uncle raced as well.
What type of racing did you guys, was your dad doing?
So mostly short tracks, like Bethel Motor Speedway was a quarter mile, so he started in a street stock. I remember him and my grandfather building the street stock at my garage growing up. So I'd always go out there as a kid and try to help him out. I'm sure I wasn't much of a help, but it was fun.
Like, how many people are in a race?
So in a NASCAR race, there's 38 in the Xfinity Series and then 40 in the Cup Series.
How about when you were starting out at Bethel?
Ooh, so that depends on the week. It depends how many showed up. So I think the maximum they would start is 25, but I mean, there were some weeks where when we were first getting started, there'd only be 5 or 6 of us.
Down in North Carolina, I guess, where most of these racers come from, that type of racing, are there way more racers down there for that type of racing?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of racers down there. And a lot of the big races are in North Carolina. Like when I got a little bit older, like 12 to 15, I started traveling to North Carolina a lot to race with those guys down there. We'd go out to Texas. We'd have a week in Florida where we'd race Bandoleros and legend cars down there. So got to travel around a little bit doing that, and suddenly all the family vacations were built around the racetrack.
Now, when you guys race, I know there's a lot of different surfaces you guys race on, right? Like, what was your favorite? I know there's like dirt, there's asphalt.
So I grew up racing asphalt short tracks. That's what I was accustomed to. Grassroots racer. And then once I got into NASCAR, we have a couple dirt races a year. As you guys know, we have a lot of road courses now as well. So I wasn't really accustomed to doing either of them. My first dirt race was in the ARCA series back in 2018. So that was a learning experience for me for sure, but it was a lot of fun. It led to a little bit of dirt modified racing as well. Got to run with Kenny Schrader down at Volusia, ran with him at the Coin as well. That was a really fun time. And then road courses, my first road course in anything except like go-karts at the mall was actually at Indianapolis in an Xfinity car in 2020.
So you spoke about following or, going with your dad to the track, then finally getting in the car yourself. How many years have you been racing, in total?
So I'm 24. I've been racing for about 14 or 15 years. I got into it when I was just turning 10. So it's been a little while now. I've been racing longer than I haven't been.
So for you to come up the ranks from just, grassroots racer all the way to, now professional NASCAR driver, was there any formal training? Did you go to school for this? Did your dad teach you? Like, how did you raise the ranks?
So growing up, it was really just a Saturday night hobby. I always loved it. I was pretty good at it. We traveled the country, won a lot of races, but I never really thought it could take us to this level. It wasn't until I was 17 I decided like I really wanted to try to make a career out of this. I went to my parents and told them that, and they weren't entirely on board. They wanted me to go to college. They wanted me to kind of go that route and have racing be a Saturday night hobby. And I can't say that I necessarily blame them. There's a lot that goes into this, and there's a lot of unknowns. So that's their option is definitely the safer bet. But I ended up trying to prove to them that I could do both, go to college and race. I took college classes at Harvard my senior year of high school just to show that like I could race and go to school as well, and ended up doing well there. So they let me do it, but it was a little bit of a sales pitch.
Now, when Brian was asking, you did all these different types of racing. I know on drag racing side, people have to like, in order for you to run certain times, you have to get licensing. Is there any type of licensing that you need for like what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So you need a NASCAR license. There's an approval process that you have to go through. They have to approve you for different tracks and things like that. To get approved for Xfinity, I had to run ARCA in 2018 and 19. I went there. I raced at Daytona, raced Talladega. I raced a lot of the big tracks, and that was what actually approved me for making my first Xfinity starts. And now at this point, obviously, I'm approved for everything, but there's definitely an approval process to be able to get a NASCAR license and really compete at this level.
So there was a reason why, like when you first started, like I think when we first met you, you were in the ARCA series.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, for those listening unfamiliar with NASCAR, because this was me a couple years ago, because I knew nothing about NASCAR, we linked up with Joe. NASCAR, I thought, was Jeff Gordon, Dale Earnhardt. That was the NASCAR that I was aware of. But come to find out, there's several levels, would you say, or series?
Different series, I think, right?
Right, different series of NASCAR. And, it starts, I guess your top tier is Cup, second tier Xfinity, third tier Truck,
Yep.
and fourth tier ARCA.
Yes.
And you got your start in ARCA. Do you necessarily have to race, like, do you have to start at ARCA to get to Cup, or are there people who just jump to Cup? Like, how does that work?
So there's a lot of different paths. It's extraordinarily difficult just to jump to Cup. Everybody that I've seen go to Cup without doing that either came from like IndyCar or Formula One, things like that, other racing series of a similar level. But somebody can't just go from like being a local short track racer to, hey, I want to drive a Cup car. That's not how it works.
Even if they had all the money in the world.
Even if you had all the money in the world, you have to go through some of the other series to get approved, to show that you can do it and show that you're not a danger on the racetrack as well.
Because like you were saying, there's 38 people on the track.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't, we still have our fair share of wrecks and crashes in NASCAR. I certainly wouldn't want to be rubbing doors with people who don't know what they're doing.
Right. Now, also, when it comes to the racing, I know back in the day, I used to love the trucks. Is the truck still a thing right now?
Yeah. Or? So the Truck Series races 22 races a year. Series is doing great. They've got tremendous talent in there, and it's really thriving.
And how many races is Xfinity?
So Xfinity's 33 races a year, and then Cup is 36.
So right now, in the series that you're racing in, how many races is there for the season?
36, right?
No, so there's 33 Xfinity races. So I race 33 times a year if I don't race a truck or a Cup car, which sometimes you can be part-time in the Truck Series or the Cup Series, being full-time in Xfinity as well.
Wow. And even if you are racing a truck, that's in the same weekend?
So a lot of times it is. So they have like for Daytona to start the year, they'll have the truck race on Friday, the Xfinity race Saturday, and the Cup race Sunday for the Daytona 500. But there's also some standalone Xfinity races, some standalone truck races. So they kind of split it up sometimes, but most of our races in Xfinity are companion races to the Cup Series.
That's awesome.
So you just went through a race weekend in general, like when all the races are together. So it would be Cup on Sunday, Xfinity Saturday, Truck also Saturday?
Truck's usually Friday. So it's like a Friday night race, and then we have Xfinity Saturday, Cup Sunday is typically how a NASCAR weekend looks.
ARCA Thursday?
So ARCA's a little bit different. So sometimes ARCA is the same day as Xfinity. Sometimes they'll have it on Saturday. But ARCA has a lot more standalone races than Trucks and Xfinity have. So I think ARCA they race 20 races a year. I think they only have 7 or 8 where it's a companion race to the NASCAR Cup Series.
Races.
Would you say ARCA would be like minor league, kind of like minor league baseball?
Yeah, that's probably a really good way of looking at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then your major league would be your Cup
Yeah,
Xfinity?
yeah, Cup Xfinity, yeah.
Got it. So you got your start in ARCA. So what got you from, local grassroots driver into ARCA? Like, what is that process? Like, for somebody who's like, I want to race NASCAR, like, how does that happen?
So it takes a lot of work. I mean, I was driving all over the country. I was racing late models at the time, and I was racing modifieds at Stafford, different things like that. And I got an opportunity with Chad Bryant Racing to make 6 starts in 2018. And that was really my opportunity. I took a gap year between high school and college to try to make this racing thing work. And I was able to get an opportunity there. And I actually broke my foot 6 days before my first ARCA start, which was at Nashville in 2018. I opted to not get a cast put on it. We taped the bone in place. A doctor taped the bone in place. And we went and raced Nashville. We ended up doing really well. We led laps. We ran really good all day. Unfortunately, we had a transmission go bad towards the end of the race, but really kind of made some noise, put me on the map a little bit. But I think the race that really did it for me in the ARCA series was Talladega in 2018. It was the first race that I wasn't supposed to run. I only had 6 races. They ran 20 ARCA series races. And the driver who was supposed to run it backed out on Tuesday morning before the race. And I'm about to get on a plane to fly back up to Jersey to get a cast put on my foot. And I get a call from the team owner, Chad. He's like, hey, we actually have an opening for Talladega this week. Is it something you want to do? And I'm like, absolutely. So at the time, the biggest racetrack I'd ever been on was a mile, and Talladega's 2.6. So I watched as much film as I could. I did some iRacing and stuff to try to get ready for it. But I was pretty nervous going there, I'll be honest with you. But we went there. We ended up running second in a pretty wild race. It was the closest finish in ARCA history. I'm pretty sure it still is to this day. I'm pretty sure it's the closest in Talladega history too. I'll have to double check that, but I'm pretty certain. And that was really like my big moment. I was on a race by race basis after that. The team kept me in the car. I ended up running all but one race that year. I didn't run the first race at Daytona, but went on to win at Berlin. Had a lot of really good runs that year.
So when you say Chad Bryant Racing asked you to race, does that mean, were you getting paid at that point?
So,
like, what does that mean?
Driver salaries are interesting, right? So, just in NASCAR in general, right? So there isn't a, like the NFL, the MLB, different things like that. They have a minimum salary, right? So if you get in, you're making X amount of money at a minimum. NASCAR really isn't that way, and most motorsports aren't. Like, you have some of the drivers in NASCAR who are obviously making millions and millions of dollars, and then there's some that really aren't making very much. So like I've had some decent years in NASCAR, and I've had some tough ones as well as far as the pay goes. So I'm not going to say exactly what I was making at the time, but it wasn't very much.
So for an aspiring driver out there, grassroots driver, it's like, you just killed my dream right there. That means, so if I drive for a team, that means I can't get paid?
Well, it doesn't mean you can't get paid. It all depends on the situation you're in, and the sponsorship you have, and the type of team you're racing for. And there's a lot of different ways that contracts are written with drivers and things. So there's a lot of variables that go into it. So that's not necessarily true, but there definitely are drivers out there that aren't racing for anything.
And do you think, like, with the drivers that are making, like, even for you, if someone offered you like a seat in a car for a whole season and said, hey, I don't have money to pay you, but you get to drive my car, is that something that people consider?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is my dream, right? This is what I love to do. I love going to the racetrack. So, I mean, there's been opportunities where I feel like we could run better, and the money might not necessarily be there, and you kind of have to make a stretch to make it happen. But like, ultimately, I'm a racer at heart. I want to run as good as I can, and that's what I do.
So that's a good topic. You know, some racers don't get paid. Some racers actually lose money because they pay to be able to get a seat in a car, from what I've learned.
So that does happen as well. There's a lot of drivers who take a chance and either take out a loan or use family money to try to get an opportunity in the sport, and then they're actually spending money to be there. And it makes it really interesting because, like, on one hand, there's drivers making millions of dollars a year, and then on another, there's some of them that are paying to be there.
Because ultimately, if you have the dream to race, Daytona or Talladega, that could technically, you could buy your way into that dream.
You could fund it yourself, essentially.
So there are drivers who try to do that, absolutely. And it works out for some, it doesn't for others. At the end of the day, it all kind of has to come together. The funding has to come together, the sponsorship has to come together, and then the driving ability and talent has to come together, right? I've seen a lot of teams come in or drivers come in that just didn't really have it and it doesn't work out. Or you also, at most of these places like Daytona, for instance, they send cars home who don't qualify. So there's 38 spots, but at Daytona, sometimes 45 cars show up. So 7 people will go to the race and not race.
Yeah.
All right, let's give some keys to success here. If anyone's, grassroots driver, you got the dream. You want to race at Daytona, you want to race at Talladega. First, you need some skill, right? Because you can technically buy a seat to race at one of those tracks during one of the big races, because some teams do have extra cars that could potentially race as long as there's a sponsor, as long as there's money to put that car on track, right? But technically, that team won't let you get behind the wheel if you're not a qualified driver, right?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of really good drivers, and there's a lot of NASCAR in and of itself is a tremendous platform for businesses and sponsors. So there is a lot of sponsorship money out there. So there are drivers who have the funding, but don't have the ability or don't have the experience that a lot of teams still will not take.
So there's still a lot of politics, and also like all your stars have to line up for you to get that opportunity.
All the stars have to line up for sure, but
it's not just about the money.
It's not just about the money. I mean, I personally think it's more about talent than money. I think there are a lot of drivers who do not have the funding but have the talent that make it, and I have yet to see somebody who doesn't have the talent but has the money make it.
Yeah.
On that topic, how much does a race weekend cost? Of course, now we're talking different levels. You got Cup, you got Xfinity, you got
in the current series
ARCA.
that you're racing.
So we'll talk Xfinity. How much does a race weekend cost?
So it really depends, right? So there's kind of like tiers to NASCAR. There's top teams who have a much bigger budget than the mid-pack teams or the low-budget teams, as we call them. So it really depends, right? So
how much does the number one team in Xfinity, if you had to put number on it, how much do they spend on a weekend?
Spend in a weekend, easily 6 figures.
Are we talking 900,000?
Lower 6 figures. Once you get to the Cup Series, it does get to the mid to high 6 figures, but in Xfinity, it's typically low 6 figures.
So top 5 team in Xfinity, you're saying maybe $200,000 per weekend?
It's still a little bit high, but yeah, somewhere around there.
Now, when we're saying this weekend, like, let's just say, you go out for qualifying and you hurt your motor or something like that happens.
Well, before we even get into that, let's step back a little bit. He just said it costs $100,000 to $200,000 to $300,000 to race in a weekend.
Which is why I'm asking, like,
us being from drag racing.
Yeah, that's
our friends who race,
different. Again, I guess different levels. Right?
Yeah,
like our friends race
grassroots level. When you're talking like, I just spent $5,000 this weekend. Like, damn.
Yeah.
Well,
I just blew a motor. We spent 20,000 Meanwhile, you're talking, these guys race 33 times a year, spending $100,000, $200,000 a weekend.
That's a lot.
I mean,
hey, that's, a couple $1 million to get a team out.
Well, not only that, so racing at this level is expensive, but from what I've heard, drag racing is not all that much different. I know at the grassroots level, it's less expensive, but
NHRA,
I mean, NHRA, their budget's like, they're rebuilding a motor after every run in some cases. So I mean, I don't know the exact figures over there, but I know it gets very high as well.
Hugo was actually wondering about that.
That's why, just knowing that, a motor can let go, right? I know you guys don't really get into in depth with the motors, but if a motor was to let go, is that something that you guys rebuild, or You know, like how does that happen?
Yeah, what
Like,
happens if you
in that
blow
instance?
a motor?
So in most
Well, let me
cases,
stop. Let me reiterate that. What happens when you blow a motor during a race weekend? How much does that cost you?
so in most cases, NASCAR teams will get what's called a motor program. So they essentially lease a motor for the weekend from either Roush Yates, TRD, ECR engines, Hendrick motors, like that type of deal. And when they do that, they have a fixed price for the weekend or for the season. And that includes everything. So if something malfunctions with the motor, if it blows up, if something happens during your race weekend, they'll put a backup motor in it. It doesn't cost any more. But that's typically like when the motor shops do their accounting and budgeting for the year and figuring out what they're going to charge teams, that they account for here and there. You're going to have something blow up.
Failures and stuff.
Yeah.
Now, when you say like like this motor lease program, like when you show up to the race for the weekend, is there a motor in that car, or is it something that gets put in?
So it typically gets dropped off at the race shop the week before the race, sometimes 2 weeks before the race. And then our team will put the motor in the car. The motors are sealed, so you can't go in them. You can't change anything really or look in them. So that's typically how the lease program works. And then there is an option to buy motors as well, but they're not as good as the lease program. So lease motors we call having an A motor program, and then if you buy them, it's a B motor program. It's not as good. It's cheaper, but they don't make as much horsepower. They don't have the same torque, et cetera, et cetera.
So when you say like top tier teams, are the motors setups different between like a top 10 car versus middle of the pack car?
Oh yeah, I mean the top tier cars, the mid pack cars, the low tier. The lower teams, there's a ton of difference. There's all of the top teams, they have a ton of engineering. They have a ton of engineers. They have a lot of people working on how can we make this car as fast as possible, where a lot of the mid-tier teams and the bottom-tier teams, they're just trying to get to the car to the racetrack every week, right? So they're still doing the best that they can with the resources that they have. But like once you get to the bottom tier cars, like they're really just trying to get the car to the racetrack and keep it going. I mean, we have a really strenuous schedule, and when you only have 3 or 4 guys in the shop, it can get really tough. And then some of the bigger teams, they have hundreds of guys.
So you're saying the top tier teams, are their motors any different than the lower tier team?
So the top tier teams always have a lease motor program. The bottom tier teams typically do not. So the motor program is different. Yeah.
So the motor would make actually more power, more torque.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've run B motors a lot. I've run A motors a lot, and there is a massive difference.
Wow.
When you said they send you sealed motors, they only send you one, but you did mention if you blow a motor, you'll have another one for that race. Like, who comes with the backups? Like,
so typically, there will be one on the hauler, so we'll have an extra motor. But like on the team I'm on right now, there's 3 cars with RSS. So when we have a lease motor program, there's typically a backup motor, but there's usually only, like, it's not my backup motor, it's not Ryan's backup motor, it's just the backup motor. Exactly. Okay. So, and if for some reason there were to be 2 motor failures that weekend, Roush Yates has other backup
Teams
motors at the track, or other teams that have motors that they can
because
swap
the
out.
motors are technically the same.
Yeah, they're technically the same, and Roush Yates owns all of them. They're just leasing it to us for the weekend.
And then but your team can change the motor. It's not like Roush Yates has to be the guy, like their guys have to change their own, like the motors, right?
So it's kind of a collaborative effort. If something happens at the racetrack, Roush Yates has guys there that will come help us. They have a motor tuner as well. So it's kind of a collaborative effort there. And usually when something like that happens at the track, you'll see a lot of guys running around because we have a very short window to change this motor in before we have to go race.
And if a motor does happen to let go during a race, you're pretty much out of the race.
You're done.
Right?
Yeah, you're done. NASCAR used to let you change them in the garage. And I remember watching as a kid, you'd see some of these guys come back out 30, 40 laps down and be able to go pick up some spots. But NASCAR doesn't let you do that anymore.
Okay.
So typically, it sounds like you don't blow motors often when it comes to races.
No, I mean, Roush Yates engines, TRD, all of the motors that we get, they put a lot of time in, a lot of effort, and there's very few mechanical failures or motor failures and things like that at this level. It does happen though. I mean, when you're trying to get everything you possibly can out of a motor, you're pushing it to the limit, right? So sometimes things do happen, but it's pretty rare.
And are your cars fuel injected now, or are they still carbureted?
So the Xfinity Series is the last NASCAR series where we are still carbureted. The Cup Series is fuel injected, and so is the Truck Series.
Okay. So being that it is carbureted, are there, I guess, you don't tune your own car, right? Like the motor program tunes them, right?
So,
or like not motor program, I mean like Roush Yates or whoever your supplier's tuning the.
Yeah, so Roush Yates helps, and then we have a motor tuner as well at the track.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there is stuff that you could still.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that you can still do as a team, and you can work on, and you can build and help with these cars, and that's why so many of the bigger teams, they just have more people, not necessarily at the track, but in R&D.
They have more resources.
Exactly.
How many tires do you go through in a weekend, and what's the cost on that?
So it depends on the race, because we're given a tire allotment every week. So if the track's super abrasive, sometimes we'll be given a higher tire allotment than if it's not as abrasive. Like going to Darlington, I think it's our highest tire allotment. I think we have 8 or 9 there.
8 or 9 sets.
8 or 9 sets of tires, yeah. So 4 tires to a set. We have 8 or 9 sets going there that weekend.
So, but when you say allotment, is that like is it regulated or?
Yeah, so you're only allowed to buy a certain amount of tires because basically, like at Darlington or Richmond or a lot of these tracks that have really big tire fall off, you could over the course of a run, you're going to lose 3 seconds in tire fall off. So if you have an extra set of tires compared to the car next to you, you're going to beat them every time. So they set an allotment to how many tires each team is allowed to have, and then they kind of build a strategy of when you're going to use those tires.
Every team has to buy these tires?
Yeah. So every team has to buy the tires. They're a little over $2,000 a set, and
that's a set standard. So, like, if me and you're on opposite teams, like I can't get a better tire than you, right?
No, all
just one tire.
Goodyear supplies all the tires. They're all the same. They've done a really good job of developing really good tires for our series that race really well. So they're all pretty much the same for the most part, and each team's only allowed to get a certain amount of them each weekend.
Wow, interesting.
Sounds like Goodyear makes a whole lot of money because they're guaranteed to sell. 8 sets of tires per car, so 38 cars, 40 cars,
45
per
cars
weekend,
for the weekend.
and that's one series. Good job, Goodyear.
Yeah, I think they're definitely doing a really good job, but I would hate to know how much they spend on R&D developing these tires and everything else, because these the tires that we race on a race weekend, in most cases they're specific to NASCAR. So I don't know what all goes into developing a tire that can go 200 miles an hour for as long as that was.
I mean, have you noticed, or do you know, do the tires actually change like every year? Like, are there
So they have different codes on the tires. Sometimes they'll have harder tires or softer tires depending on the track we're going to, or depending on how the track raced last year. If they felt like they needed to make an improvement on the tire to make the racing better, sometimes they'll make tires softer, make them harder, and they'll change the codes on them and make new tires for the race that year.
So it sounds like it's Goodyear's job to provide the best tire for every track, since every track is kind of different.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot that goes into racing in general, but the most important thing is the 4 parts of the car that touch the racetrack, right? So the tires. So if you're seeing a really good racing product out there and there's really good racing, in most cases that's due to a really good tire.
And I've been in the pits, like I see there's somebody on each pit crew team. And what I've noticed is like, there's 1 or 2 guys, like after every tire change, like all they do is measure tire. Like, I don't even really, like they scrape them, they measure them. They got all different tools. You're
checking the wears on the tires. So you're seeing how much they wore over a run. You're checking the air pressure in them, a bunch of different things just to get more of a data point as to what your car is doing, how it's handling, and then they can add that to the feedback that I give as a driver to make better adjustments throughout the race.
So literally after every tire change, those guys are, they're doing their thing,
data.
and then they're reporting that back to the.
Yeah, so they
who do they
report
give that info to.
So they give that info to the crew chief, who then can communicate it with me and let me know if the tires look good, or if there's an issue. If you will sometimes cord tires, so he'll let me know if that happens, because if you start cording tires, you really have to. If you're cording a right front, you have to be a little bit easier on the right front, because as you cord a tire, if you keep going, you're
gonna blow it out.
ultimately going to
Blow
get a flat tire. Yeah.
My wife just blew out her tire last week from cording it, so.
Oh my god! So I don't want to ask how that happened on a street car, but
Yeah, extremely cambered.
Yeah?
She had no idea it was bald, and I got the call. She's like, I just blew out a tire on 287. I was like, what? Like, what possibly could have happened? And when I got there and we popped it off, I was like, man, you drove this thing down to the metal. Yeah,
And
that's
she
why
probably
that
asked,
tire.
like, well, you don't want to set it up.
And meanwhile, Joe's like, yeah, I do that every weekend, 8 sets of tires.
oh yeah, it's a lot
Living
of fun.
on
It's
edge.
a lot of fun.
Could potentially end up in the wall going 200 miles an hour.
Burning rubber.
Had that ever happened to you? You blew out a tire during a race?
Oh yeah. I have a. So, we've cut tires. I think I cut 2 tires this year alone.
Did it mess you up? Like,
Oh yeah. So we
he's like, oh yeah, totally slammed into 10 cars.
no, it wasn't that bad. But at Richmond, we cut a left front tire on lap 4.
That sucks.
Had to pit under green, lost 3 laps. And,
Lap 4.
oh yeah. So what happened there
Who's
is
to blame on that?
So we were racing 3 wide, and I guess somebody drove into the side of me and got the tire. So it was a racing deal. It wasn't like a tire failure.
Yeah.
It was
It's an accident.
Yeah, it was an accident. An unfortunate one on lap 4, because we were super fast. Ended up we were really fast all day, but could just never get the laps back. So it was a really tough day for us.
So you actually mentioned your your achievement at Talladega with the ARCA finish. What is that again? The
closest finish in ARCA history.
Okay, so would that be your greatest achievement in your NASCAR racing career thus far?
So I think it's the biggest stat,
Okay,
but I don't think it's my biggest achievement
what is your biggest achievement in your NASCAR career thus far?
thus far. I mean, that's tough. It really
Pick one, only one.
Only one. I don't know.
What's your
All right, fine,
what's your
2.
best finish?
So my best finish in the NASCAR Xfinity Series actually came earlier this year at Daytona. We ended up running 7th.
Okay.
So we had a really good day at Daytona earlier this year, and then in the ARCA Series back in 2018, we won at Berlin.
So what between those two? I mean, what felt better? A number 7 in Xfinity.
I think winning always feels better. It doesn't matter the level.
So. Is that the greatest achievements though?
I think so.
That's cool.
That's cool. I mean, out of all ARCA drivers, are there racers there's probably a bunch who've just never won.
Oh
right?
yeah. I mean, there's a ton of racers at every level who have never won.
Shout out to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, like, do you think, being that there are so many drivers, so many racers on the track at one time, and obviously it takes time, it takes experience for you guys to get that, just to get the experience under your belt. What's like typically like the amount of time it takes for someone to like to start seeing those wins, start placing like top 10 and moving up?
So it all has to come together, right? You have to have a team that's capable of doing it. So you have to be able to get to a top team. And then as a driver, you have to develop your racecraft enough that you can go out there and get it done. So it's all really, it all really has to come together. It has to click with you as a driver, and you have to have a team that's capable of going out there and winning. So a saying I've heard a lot is you can't drive a slow car fast. So you have to have a really good team behind you, and you have to have a really good situation. But then once you have that, you have to go get it done as a driver.
I'm curious your take on it then. A driver who's racing bottom tier, why do you think they race bottom tier? Is everyone's goal to race so that they could get top tier?
Yeah, we all go to the racetrack every week building towards the opportunity to win, right? So,
Because it's like if you're bottom tier, you know you're not. Your chances of winning are slim to none.
yeah, exactly. So that was one thing I really had to learn when I got to the Xfinity Series, because it was one of the first times in my career that I was going to the racetrack without a shot to win, without a realistic shot to win.
Because you knew you were getting into a bottom tier car.
Yeah. So there was a couple of years of that, and it was still, you're still racing, right? So you're racing other guys in your same level of equipment, right? So it doesn't matter if you're racing for first or you're racing for 31st. The racing's hard. There's a lot of really good, talented guys out there that you're going to be racing. So I feel like it helps to develop your racecraft and you learn. And but ultimately, the goal is to be able to get into the equipment that can win.
So was that your goal? I mean, I'm asking you firsthand at this point. So you came in as a bottom tier. You came into a bottom tier car, knowing that you still did it. You know, you committed to it. Were you doing that because the end goal is I gotta be the best I can be in this bottom tier car because I'm racing towards one of the top tier teams hiring me?
So at the time, that was the sponsorship that we had available, and that was what we can do. And we were just starting our marketing agency, FGR Excel. So we went to SS Greenlight, which was a mid-tier team. We weren't really capable of winning, but we were capable of running mid-pack. And we used that platform to build our marketing agency, figure out what worked and didn't work for sponsors. We proved the concept. And then we've continuously built on that the last couple of years to be able to continue to raise more sponsorship. And I was also able to work on my skills and get better as a driver. And it's all kind of started to come together on that side of it.
So that goes together with the idea of sponsorship because, okay, you're a bottom tier driver. You have experience and talent to get into a top tier car, but it costs money to get into those seats, right? Into those cars. You need sponsors to make that happen. So how important is sponsorship to your program and
To your success, essentially.
yeah, and how do you go about getting sponsors?
So that's a really good question. So basically, sponsorship is incredibly important to what we do as race car drivers. It's what allows us to go to the racetrack in a lot of cases. And ultimately, what I try to do here at FGR when it comes to our sponsors is this is a business at the end of the day, right? NASCAR is big business. So when a company sponsors you and they give you money, let's say they give you $1, right? They want to know not only how do they get that dollar back in the form of an ROI, but how do they get $1 and then some? So they know it was a good investment. They see their sales go up. They see an improvement in their business. Like, how did our platform help them as a business? And that's what we built FGR around, was being able to show a super attractive ROI to the sponsors we work with. And over the course of the last 3 or 4 years, we've been able to put together a program that shows an incredibly attractive ROI, and every year our sponsors continue to come back.
This was something that I learned along the way. For example, Jeff Gordon, I always knew him as driving the DuPont car, but that just meant DuPont sponsored Jeff for 38 races, right?
Yeah.
From what I'm seeing and learning now, and has it always been this way? Like a sponsor can sponsor one race.
So a sponsor can sponsor one race. They can sponsor the whole season. As NASCAR is today, there's very few full season sponsors. So I think the closest sponsor there is to a full season sponsor is FedEx. I think they have about 30 races with Denny Hamlin.
That's the Jordan car, right?
So Denny Hamlin owns a team with Michael Jordan, but the car that FedEx is on is Joe Gibbs racing car.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different sponsors that they'll pick up 4 races, 5 races, 1 race, 10 races. And it really depends on, one, what their marketing budget is that they're able to spend in the sport. And then 2, what their goals are out of the partnership, right? There's some that are location based. Like they really want to focus on the Florida area. So they sponsor the 2 races at Daytona and they sponsor Homestead, right? So they do a 3 race package that way. Or you're a company based in the Northeast, maybe you'll do New Hampshire, Dover, Pocono, things like that. Or you're a company that's trying to expand into somewhere. Or they're trying to expand into a new region. So some of them are location based. Others are they'll sponsor some of the bigger races. So like Daytona is our biggest race of the year. It gets the largest TV viewership, things like that. So there's a lot of companies that want to just do Daytona in a lot of cases. And then each race we do, they all kind of have their own value in their own way, right? So you can do different activation, different things depending on which track you go to. You can do at-track activation. You could do spots at the midway, which is like where all the NASCAR fans go to buy merchandise and see new displays, things like that. So you can buy a spot there. So there's a lot of different stuff you can do as a sponsor to activate within NASCAR. And that really dictates how many races they'll sponsor.
The original question was, how did you get sponsors? I see you got your Bucked Up Energy buckshot right there.
So
Bucked Up has been a sponsor for your program for 2 years now?
So Bucked Up's on their 4th year with us, actually.
Talk about it. How'd they get on board? How's it going? Where is it going?
So it's going great. Bucked Up has been growing a ton. I actually had to bring my buckshot here today. It's getting a little late here, so I'm gonna open it up here in a second.
What is that?
So
it looks like a bullet from here.
So it actually
Shotgun shell.
So it does look like a shotgun shell. That's why it's called buckshot. But basically, it's a high-powered energy shot. So I'm gonna drink it here in a few minutes, and I'll be able to get through this podcast no problem.
And you probably won't sleep tonight, and you're ready for another podcast at 6 a.m.
Absolutely. 5 hours just isn't enough.
So do you take one of those before every race?
So I drink a Bucked Up before every race, and I have these, honestly, a pretty fair amount. Anytime I really need to get something done.
So would Bucked Up, were they involved in NASCAR before sponsoring with you? Talk us through it. Like, how did you start working with them? How does the sponsorship work? Did they sponsor all your races?
No, so Bucked Up sponsors a handful of races a year. And we were the ones that first brought them into NASCAR. We brought them in 2020 during COVID, actually. So it was really cool to do that there. And then they've just grown so much as a company from 2020 to now. It's really impressive what they've been able to do. And I've been really happy to be able to grow with them. So it's really cool to have them in NASCAR.
I want to get into, like, outside of driving, like, what's your race preparation? Any type of training that you guys do specifically to get your body like used to driving.
Yeah, because when you're driving, I mean, it's like 120 degrees inside that car.
Try 145
for average NASCAR races. How long? Like in the Cup Series?
So in the Cup Series, they're probably about 4 hours.
So 4 hours, 150 degrees in a car.
150 in the car, but you got like a cooling suit. How's that work?
So no matter how you cut it, it is hot.
What's the body temp? What's your
so
body temp? Do they monitor? Do you have like vital monitoring?
So there are some drivers who do. I personally do not, but
you can wear your Apple Watch, right?
So I
don't even like sitting in saunas. Like, that sounds crazy for me.
So it is unbelievable. So I can tell you this. I don't know my body temp, but I do know that I will lose between 6 and 12 pounds in water weight over the course of a race.
Wow. So in 4 hours, you're losing, let's just say 10 pounds.
Sweat it all out.
Yeah.
That's
So
wild.
hydration, is there some type of hydration that you have during the race, or you only get that at pit stops? Or?
So they'll give you a water bottle on pit stops occasionally, but you can only drink it really under caution. You can't do it while you're green. There's just
you can't wear like a camel pack and take a little sip?
Some drivers do. I don't.
Oh, but it's allowed.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm usually so focused on racing and what I'm doing when we're under green flag that I don't even think about getting a drink.
You might need like a camel pack with some buckshot in it.
So Bucked Up actually has a product specifically for hydration that I take all the time. I have it in the car with me when I'm racing, and It really does a really good job.
Do you got one of those cooling suits?
So I do actually, and they work pretty well when they work. I've had them go bad a couple of times, and
You're probably even hotter.
oh, it's terrible because when they go bad,
It's another layer.
It's another layer on you.
not only is it another layer,
It's
it's
weight, right?
putting hot water across your body.
What?
So, and the only times I've had it go bad, I don't know if it's coincidence or I don't know
the
if
hottest race
the
probably,
hottest
right?
races of the year they go bad. So like,
sounds like torture.
so it
200 miles an hour. You look
It's just sweating.
just hot, yo.
oh it cooks you. It cooks you.
Man.
You got like a sweatband or headband. How you keep
No.
the sweat out of your eyes?
So
That's a valid question.
honestly, I've never gotten sweat in my eyes. I've never really thought about it, but honestly, the more I think about it, I think it's so hot that your sweat
It just
evaporates. like you're not dripping sweat; it just evaporates.
It's just
Well,
gone.
then yeah, because your helmet goes up to right above over your eyebrows, right? So technically, your helmet's just absorbing.
Yeah, and I mean, in a lot of cases, when I think about it, like when I played basketball or lacrosse or things like that, I would sweat a lot. But when you play basketball indoors, at most it's 75 degrees,
Yeah, it's air conditioned.
so you can see the sweat pouring down because you're doing a lot of work. You're exerting energy to make yourself sweat, but it's not evaporating quickly. Where when it's double that in the race car, I think it just
Full humidity, all that.
Only you know this. We've never been in a 200 mile an hour car ripping around the track
4 hours.
for 4 hours, let alone 20 minutes or 5 minutes. But you've watched a lot of races. What's tougher on the body, being a spectator sitting in the sun for 4 hours just cooking, or doing that?
So I think it certainly depends on the race. But no, it's definitely harder in the car. But the one thing I will say,
But you get the wind at least, though. No.
So,
He's in a suit.
well, not only that, there's very little airflow in the
I
cars.
thought, don't you guys have like those ducks that?
Yeah, they don't do very much.
Nah?
No.
I thought that was the whole point of that, so that it throws air into you. So
It is the point, but they still don't do very much. So from an engineering standpoint, the least amount of airflow you can get in the car creates
better-
the better the aerodynamics are, the better the downforce is.
Right.
So the engineers do everything they can to not have air in the car.
Air out. Yeah.
but from a humane purpose, they need to give you air because
Yeah, no, like we have like it's not like we're like gasping for air in there, but like when you think about going 200 miles an hour, like a lot of people think like, oh, like there's a ton of wind in there. There's really not. Like it's pretty stationary air for going that fast.
So back to that. I mean, obviously, me and Brian off the street, we're not gonna like our bodies probably can't handle that, no matter how good of a conditioning we think we have. What are there physical conditioning programs that the drivers are required to do, or is it that mostly set on your own?
Oh, so I don't want to say it's required because it really is. A lot of individual drivers will do it on their own, but you really need to do it as a driver. I know very few drivers who don't train and can get into these types of situations and deal with that type of heat. Like I do a lot of heat room training. I do a lot of cycling, a lot of running, a lot of cognitive drills, a lot of weightlifting and things like that as well. So,
in the heat.
oh yeah. So like when we'd go cycle and things like that during the summer in North Carolina, you'll pick the hottest time of the day. So you'll go out at 2:30, 3 o'clock and bang out.
So you're planning for that.
Yeah.
You want to accustom your body to it.
Oh, so the more time you can spend in the heat, the better, because you just have to get
You're
used
in
to
that
it in the car.
environment, yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, on the other side, last few years, especially now with the IR simulators and stuff like that, how important is that on the training side as well?
Oh, simulation is incredibly important. So I have an iRacing simulator at my house. I spend a lot of time on that. I do races every week. I get on there with some of the other drivers and work on things. And then the manufacturers also have their own simulator. So the biggest difference between the simulator I have at my house versus the manufacturer's sim, there's a lot of differences, but the biggest one is that the manufacturer sims actually simulate my car on the racetrack, right?
Wow.
So every single component on my NASCAR car is measured to thousandths of inches and it's put into the simulator. So we can make changes in the simulator that emulate real life. And we can build a setup off of that. We can build changes off of it. Where the iRacing simulator at my house, it helps with my racecraft, but it doesn't help us build a setup to go to the racetrack and be better.
Interesting.
And that's also a difference between a bottom tier team versus a top tier team. The quality of the simulator available to the drivers is completely different.
Oh,
right?
absolutely. I mean, when I was with mid to bottom tier teams, we would never get simulator time. I didn't even see the inside of a manufacturer simulator till my third year in Xfinity.
Because of access, or
Yeah, just access. I mean, these simulators cost a tremendous amount of money to build and make. I mean, it is unbelievable.
It's like a custom. It's like custom.
Yeah, I mean,
is the simulator at the manufacturer? Or is that your team's garage?
No, so the manufacturers own the sims. So Toyota owns them.
So you
Ford
go to
owns them and
Toyota?
shit. So Toyota or Ford. I've never been in the Chevy one, but basically the Toyota simulator and the Ford simulator, they give the top teams a lot of access, and the mid to bottom tier teams get minimal access, or in a lot of cases no access, just because there isn't enough time in the day, right? So the manufacturers give the top teams the most access because they're their best opportunity to go to the racetrack and win. So,
And I'm assuming the teams have to pay to sit on these simulators, yeah?
I don't think so. No,
Built into their budget.
I don't think so. I honestly don't know how all of that works, but I don't think.
But you've sat in them, manufacturer simulators.
Yeah, so I've been in the Ford simulator. I've been in the Toyota simulator.
And when you're in the simulator, are you like fully suited up, or?
So yeah, and in some cases you're fully suited up. I mean, it's incredibly immersive. The simulator moves. It's got a screen completely around you. It's the inside of the simulator looks exactly like the way your car is going to look in real life. Wow. So like every switch is in the same place. It's identical.
Okay.
So speaking of simulators, I actually had the opportunity to go to one of these top tier facilities. I won't mention it just because I don't even know if I was able to even walk near this room, but the simulators are top secret at some of these race teams, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, all of these race teams, manufacturers, whoever it is, they spend a lot of money on R&D and they spend a lot of money on engineering, and they don't want their secrets walking out the door, right?
Like I remember I was walking in that direction and I got grabbed by the shoulder, like, you can't go there. I was like, what? Why? They're like, no, that room is like literally top secret. Like only the driver and team owners allowed in that room.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff that the general public and other race teams are not allowed to see or know about what a lot of these teams are doing, just because it's proprietary information, right? It's stuff that they spent money on R&D to figure out, and they had a lot of smart people spend a lot of time to figure out how to get an advantage, and they don't want everybody else to know it.
Now, I know in like different types of racing, there's always like someone's always cheating or someone's always trying to do something to, get that advantage. Have there been teams in NASCAR caught cheating, or
all the time? All the time.
And what types of cheating?
How often does it happen?
All the time.
What is the type of cheating that happens?
I mean, I feel like there's a story every couple weeks about a team having an issue in tech or getting caught. And ultimately, sometimes they're blatantly cheating. Other times they're just trying to get as much as they can. And because at the end of the day, we're all trying to compete for hundredths of seconds, right? Very, very small amounts of time. So if you're able to get a little bit of an advantage by getting into the gray area, if you will, or if you're able to get some of this stuff through tech, it's an advantage.
And if you do get caught, what are the types of penalties here? Like, has a team ever been told, like, you can't even race this race? Like, is that how...
So in tech before the race, if they catch something in tech before the race, they will make you fix it. So you have to solve the problem or fix what you did before you go out there. I don't ever remember a time where a team wasn't allowed to race. Maybe they had to pull out a backup car, but I don't even remember that happening. Usually they can fix it. But I do remember times where in post-race inspection, teams are caught cheating, and then there's usually massive fines by NASCAR, different things like that, depending on what it was.
And that's where I think I'm trying to get at is what types of cheating are there? Is it like something with suspension, like downforce stuff? I know there's like minimum heights. The car can't be super low, shit like that.
So everything you can think of. Anywhere that you could potentially get an advantage, teams have tried to manipulate.
Right.
Right. I mean, on the Cup car, there was a story earlier this year of Hendrick Motorsports. Basically, when you buy on the new Cup car, when you buy parts from NASCAR, you're not allowed to change the parts at all. You're not allowed to make your own. It has to be exactly the way they sold it to you. And they modified their hood louvers to, I don't know if it was an advantage or not. I don't know why you would modify them if it wasn't an advantage, so I'm sure it was. But they got in a bunch of trouble. They got a giant fine. They got driver points docked, and then it ended up going to
like you can fight it, right? Like arbitration.
Yeah.
Like
so they fought it, and they
challenge it.
Yeah, so they challenged it. Ended up going to a kind of like a court panel, like an
arbitrator.
Yeah,
probably.
Absolutely. And they got the driver points back, but they still had to pay the fine. So I mean, there's just a lot of different things that NASCAR can impose penalties on. It could be a monetary fine. It could be a points penalty. In some cases, they could take your win away if you won the race and ended up cheating. So there's a lot of different things they can do.
Okay.
I actually meant to ask this earlier when we were talking about how the high temps sitting in the race car, up to 150 degrees. Is it like sitting in a hot sauna, 150 degrees for 4 hours? Is that comparable?
So it's a little bit different than a sauna. So a sauna,
that's like the dry heat.
Yeah. So a sauna is super humid. There's a lot of moisture in there, where in the car, it's a dry heat. So I think the difference between a sauna and the race car is you're drenched in sweat in a sauna because there's so much humidity and moisture in there, right? Where I feel like in the race car, it's a much drier heat, so it dries you out. You get dehydrated quicker in a drier heat than you do in the humidity, in my opinion. That's why I feel like a lot of the training we do as well is in heat rooms, not necessarily saunas. So you can still turn the heat up to 150 degrees, but it's not a steam room.
You ever work out in a heat room?
Nah, I heard people that like that hot yoga. I ain't never tried.
Yeah, is that a heat room where they do hot yoga?
So hot yoga basically is a heat room. Yeah,
Right.
I don't think they turn it up as high as they do for us.
All right, so let's say I'm in a hot yoga room and I turned it up to 140 degrees. Me sitting in that room for 4 hours, is that what you're dealing with? I'm trying to just get a comparison here.
So all right,
I can't imagine.
If you're looking,
sounds like torture.
If you're looking for a comparison, turn the heat up in the hot yoga room to 140 degrees.
Yeah.
Put a stationary bike in there, and then ride on the bike. But while you're riding on the bike, play like chess or something like that, because you still have to mentally be focused and be able to think.
Well, even better, put an iRacing simulator in a hot yoga room at 140, and that's pretty much what you're dealing with.
Yeah, and sitting there for 4 or 5 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, that don't sound
pretty intense.
Yeah, that sounds crazy.
Because from us, we just like, oh, you guys are just turning left.
Yeah, man, I got a CRX without AC, and I'm like, I don't want to take that thing out when it's 85 degrees, 90 degrees out. That's hot.
I mean, that's like, and a lot of people ask me the difference between like Formula One type racing and NASCAR from the physicality standpoint. And that's honestly probably the biggest difference is they don't have to deal with the type of heat that we deal with because they have an open cockpit. So the G-forces they deal with are a lot higher than ours, but the heat is nowhere near.
And
let's talk
not
about
racing
it.
for as long either.
Yeah, typically not.
The races aren't that long.
No, and they pass way less cars.
F1, NASCAR. Joe, talk about it.
So I love both of them. I really love F1, but I really feel like NASCAR drivers are like, we have to be the most versatile drivers in pretty much any series, in my opinion. We go from super speedways like Daytona, Talladega to the dirt at Bristol to road courses to short tracks to intermediate tracks. Like, we have to do so many different things and master so many different disciplines of racing, where Formula One, like, they go to different tracks, but they're all pretty similar styles of racing.
Now, also, just so people know, NASCAR, you guys still transmission wise, it's not automatic trans. It's a
Manual, yeah.
gated manual trans, right?
Yeah, so the Cup cars now have a sequential shifter. Ours
wow.
is still a gated manual, yeah,
Okay.
in Xfinity.
So with a clutch, everything.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I didn't even know that.
Interesting. I didn't know that they went to sequentials.
So funny enough, when they first switched to it, there's a few guys that ended up blowing up motors just because they're used to. Yeah, they would downshift when they meant to upshift, just because it's like what they were used to their entire career. So like the first year they did it, some of the guys had issues coming off pit road and things like that, just because it's what they're used to. They're not used to.
Right.
Like when you're going from second to third coming back, they're used to going from second to third on the shifter.
Now, something like that also in the transmissions, can you guys change gear ratio, shit like that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So you can change all of that. And like, there's a lot of post-race reports that we go through and post-race debriefs where we talk about how the motor pulled from second to third gear on restarts, third to fourth gear, different things like that. So that when we go back to a racetrack either later in the year or the next year, you can just keep getting better and
better
keep
data. And
exactly,
so you know
exactly
how to set the car up. And how many gears in the transmissions?
4.
4 speeds. Okay. And what about the sequential? Same thing.
So the sequentials are 5.
Okay. Interesting. And what's the motors like redline?
So we redline right about 9,000 RPMs.
That's a V8, 9,000.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
It's screaming.
I mean, my shift point in most cases is between 8,400 and 8,800.
So when you guys are full throttle on, like, you know, going at it, the motor is at what, like just under 9,000?
Yeah, like right around 8,000 RPM.
Oh wow.
Once we're racing, yeah.
We're talking, you might not know the answer to this. Maybe you do. Number one team, let's say in NASCAR Xfinity, let's say top
The
team.
number one guy.
Yeah, number one guy.
Number one. So it's a tough question because some teams are better at some tracks, some teams are better at others. But like the top teams in Xfinity, right? You have Junior Motorsports, you have Joe Gibbs Racing, you have Stuart Haas, you have RCR, you have Colleague.
And your team is?
So I am with Joe Gibbs Racing part-time this year, and I'm with RSS Racing for the rest of the races.
So if we're talking, you know, not specifically your team, but a top tier team in general, everyone on that team is getting paid, right? From the driver to the pit crew, everyone's getting paid, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's a job.
So you don't have to be specific on this, but is this the same for every team? Who is the highest paid on the team? Is it the driver?
So it really depends on the situation, because kind of back to what we were talking about before, driver salaries vary so much depending on the contract you have as a driver, not just the team you're with, but the contract that you're able to negotiate as a driver and the value that you're able to bring to the team as a driver through sponsorship, through performance, different things like that. So in most cases, I do want to say it's the driver, but it definitely varies.
And this is just for aspiring people who, you know, potentially want to have or to be in NASCAR as a career, whether it be, you know, from the back end business side or to be on track as, you know, crew chief or pit crew. Besides the driver, like, who would be the next highest paid?
Probably the crew chief. So, but there's a lot of guys behind the scenes that really bring the whole weekend together. Like there's spotters, there's pit crew guys, there's engineers, there's car chiefs, crew chiefs. Then on the business side, you have the marketing guys, you have PR, you have team presidents. Like there's so much that really goes into bringing the race car to the racetrack every week.
Would you say it's 50-50 on a team? Like half the team is on the track and half the team is in the office knowing how important sponsorship is?
So it certainly depends on the size of the race team. So some of the bigger teams, they have a lot of guys that don't go to the racetrack. They have a lot of guys in the shop that work on the cars that just stay
in the shop.
They don't go to the racetrack. But a lot of the mid-tier teams, the smaller teams, the same guys that are in the shop are the same guys at the racetrack with you. So it really varies pretty drastically.
Joe, we spoke a lot about cars and racing. I do know, obviously you love racing. I do know you have a crazy sneaker collection and might love sneakers more than you love cars. I don't know. You tell me.
So I definitely do not love sneakers more than cars, but it is a close second. So I've built a pretty crazy sneaker collection over the years. I've been into sneakers since I was in middle school. So kind of being able to find some of my grails is a lot of fun.
I know you buy, you sell, you trade. At the most, how many pairs of sneakers did you have in your, own at the most?
So at the peak of my sneaker collection, I had over 200 pairs.
Over 200 pairs.
All heat or just a little bit of everything?
A little bit of everything. And then I sold about 120 of them and really consolidated it to some crazy grails. So for a while,
let's get into that. So at 200 pairs, can you put a number to what the value of 200 pairs in your collection was?
So I honestly can't put a value to it, but I will say this. So when I first started being able to get into sneakers pretty heavily back in 2019, I realized that I'm going to go broke really quickly with this. It's a hobby, but also an addiction. So I figured out how to kind of turn it into a business. So I buy, I sell, I trade, and I treat some of them like investments, like investing in the stock market and different things like that. So I've actually been able to make money in sneakers over the years. Even some of the years when racing wasn't really paying the bills, I was able to pay the bills with sneakers. So, I mean, there was years where my sneaker collection, it profited me $40,000-$50,000 a year.
You made more money selling sneakers than racing.
There was a year or two where that was the case, legitimately. Yeah.
That's what's up.
What would you say right now is what's your grail right now?
So
your number one pair.
My number one pair that I own, or my number one pair that I'm trying to get?
That you own
so far.
That I own? Probably my Back to the Future Air Mags.
And for those who don't know, those are the sneakers that Marty McFly wore in Back to the Future. Auto lace. Nike actually brought them to life.
Oh yeah. Oh,
and those sneakers
so awesome.
are $40,000.
Yeah, they're not cheap. It was that was probably the craziest grail I found.
Well, we don't need to know how much you paid, but if we went on StockX right now, how much would a size 11 be going for?
Like 40 grand. Yeah, 40, 50 grand.
And you wore yours.
So I actually wore them to NASCAR production day a couple weeks ago. It was pretty cool.
You creased them?
I did crease them. Yeah.
You're a G.
Gotta wear your kicks.
Gotta wear them.
Gotta wear your kicks.
This is the same guy who's wearing Christian Dior Jordan 1s right now that are, about $7,000. And he was showing us earlier. He's like, look how creased up these things are. I just spilled ketchup on them.
All right, I did not spill ketchup on them. But I'm a huge proponent of wearing your sneakers. So I have some of them who that are investments, but other ones I really enjoy sneakers. I enjoy the culture. I enjoy the hunt for finding some of these grails. So I have to wear them.
And that's the cool thing about the sneaker hobby. Even though you wear these sneakers, you could technically at times resell them to get your money back, or if not, make more money on them. Yeah.
I cannot tell you how many times I've bought brand new sneakers, worn them, and sold them for more than I bought them for.
Yeah, that's the awesome part about this. I mean, you're the same guy. I met up with him one time for lunch, and he popped the trunk open, and he's like, dude, I just got 3 pairs of Louis Vuitton Air Force Ones. I'm like, bro, it was hard finding pictures of these things, let alone.
Oh, dude,
you have them in your size, in your trunk.
They are the hardest shoes to find, I swear. So they're super rare as is, but basically Louis Vuitton gave them to their VIP clients, right? So their highest VIP clientele had the option to buy these sneakers.
Are you part of that VIP
I am
clientele?
not. I am most certainly not.
Okay.
So
this gets interesting.
the highest Louis Vuitton VIP clients were women. So their feet happen to be smaller. So trying to find a size 12 in these is nearly impossible in some of these colors. So it's been a fun hunt for me. I found about 3 or 4 of the 7 that I'm trying to find, but it's been a lot of fun.
What has been the hardest pair for you to get? Like, because obviously there's StockX, there's consignment shops, but there's some pairs out there like you just can't find them. Like, what pair did you get that was just, tell us of how hard it was to get?
So there's been a few that I've been looking for years. And the Air Mags were one of them. I remember, so I had about 220 pairs of sneakers and I sold over 100 of them. So it was a sale / trade. So I was looking for the What the Dunks at the time. They're from 2002, I believe. It's like a combination of 30 different dunks. They only made 300 pair. It was a promotional pair for a movie at the time. So I'd never found a size 11 and a half. Request Boutique in Charlotte, where I find a lot of my sneakers, they actually ended up getting an 11 and a half. So instantly I'm like, I have to get these. So I brought them 120 pairs of sneakers. I got the What the Dunks, and then I got the rest in cash to go buy a pair of Air Mags.
I'm just doing some rough math here. 100 pairs, roughly. I mean, retail on a pair of sneakers these days is like $150. So let's just say you didn't have general release sneakers. So let's just say $200 a pair. You roughly traded in 100 pairs, got $20,000, if not a whole lot more.
So
and you got one pair of shoes and some cash.
So I got the What the Dunks, and then I got
what, $10,000 sneakers?
Yeah. So but they're between like 10 and 20,000. Yeah. And then
light difference. 10,000, 20,000. I don't know. I'm gonna crease them anyway.
So I actually did wear up the sneaker con. But
light flex.
I was trying to find a pair of Air Mags at the time, but like I can't drop over $10,000 on a pair. Like I don't just have that in my bank account, right? So I had.
But you do have 100 pairs
that are worth that, exactly. Yeah. So I'm like, all right, so I have to sell them now so that when the opportunity comes along to buy a pair of
$20,000 in the bank account after that.
So after that, I did, so that when I finally came across a pair of Air Mags, I was able to buy them. Shout out Sold Out in Jersey City for finding those for me. That was awesome.
I like sneakers. Hugo likes sneakers. It's not too crazy for us, but I know a general person who wears like $40, $50 pairs of sneakers right now is like, what the fuck?
Well, so
it's a different game, it's a different culture.
Oh, and it's fun. It's a huge hobby of mine, and
you meet good people along the way.
Exactly.
Some people collect cards. Some people collect video games, comic books. We like sneakers.
Yeah. Absolutely. And anytime you could turn your passion into a business as well.
It doesn't hurt to make
I don't have to tell you that, Brian, So
that's why I could definitely relate here, but I've never worn a pair well worth over $5,000, but I'll tell you, every time I've seen Joe, he's always wearing sneakers well worth over $1,000. NASCAR, if you guys haven't already given this man his accolade for the freshest collection, he rightfully deserves it.
Yeah, I have yet to see another NASCAR driver that has a collection anywhere near what mine is.
What's up, man? That's cool.
We got to get you on that Jordan team.
Yeah, what's up, Jordan?
Danny Hamlin.
I mean, honestly, I'd be super stoked if Michael would just come sign my 1985 Breads.
Hey man,
that's right. You do have that pair, right? The original Jordan ones.
Not the lost and founds.
No. Like I have the original ones from 1985. Right. So that was something I was doing that was fun. So the Jordan 1 Bread is one of my favorite sneakers of all time. So I'm like, I want to get one from every year they came out. So they were 1985, 1994, 2001, 2011, 2013, 2016, and then the patent breads that just came out. And I was able to get my 1985 ones. They're in really good condition. And
wood box?
No. So trying to find the craziest thing, the cardboard is more rare than the sneakers. So people who have them brand new in the box, like it's a $30,000 sneaker all day. I got for a steal. I felt like they're in really good condition, don't have the box, slightly used, but for the history, I'm like, how can I not get these? Like I got them for under $2,000.
No way.
Oh, so that was probably one of the best sneaker finds I've ever had.
That's one of the best deals you got.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's almost like now that when we put this out, you're gonna have to keep that pair on you at the track at all times, just in case MJ
Just in
shows
case.
up.
So
He does go to the races.
Oh,
right?
he goes to the races all the time. So I won't lie. They've been traveling to the racetrack with me
You already been
last
doing
little
that.
bit. I've been trying.
The opportunity.
You can't just make that happen. You can't just walk up to the trailer. I mean, you're a driver. You got full access.
No, I know, but it's
You gotta put the driver pride to the side and fanboy out a little bit. I mean, it's Michael Jordan, bro.
No, it's true. It is Michael Jordan.
I just saw actually today on Golden Auctions, they're auctioning off Karl Malone's Dream Team collection. He has every single jersey and pair of shoes from the 1994 Dream Team, and they're auctioning off. Karl Malone owns the whole collection, right?
Yeah.
And his Jordan's jersey right now is over $1 million.
That's crazy.
Meanwhile, every other player is like, anywhere from like 10,000 to 100,000. Jordan's jersey, $1 million. You got to put the driver pride to the side. You got to walk up to the man like, yo, I drive. I just want to say what's up to Jordan real quick. And you got to whip out the sneaker. Everybody like, all right, let him in.
No, I know.
What other guy walks in here with it?
I just want him signed for me. Like,
yeah,
it's like a really cool deal. Like I don't even.
And a picture. Come on, you got to get the picture too.
No, of course.
And then if he happens to sign you to the team, why not?
I mean, I wouldn't be mad about it.
Yo, that might be the icebreaker. You got to come in your suit, but wear a Jordan jersey on top, holding the sneaker. Like, yo, security, I got to come through. Check this out, bro.
Just total fanboy.
Yeah, I got to fanboy out.
You got to do it. Got to do it.
Security got to let you through at that point. Try it at the next race. You know he's at.
I'm going to have to.
You should do it, man. That's totally worth it. You might even make the headlines there, like, Joe Graf Jr., Xfinity driver, approaches
you definitely
the GOAT.
Oh my gosh.
Gotta have your photographer.
I mean, I love wearing crazy kicks to the racetrack. Like, I don't know if you guys saw at Talladega, I wore the big red boot out there to driver intros and everything.
Yeah, I've seen that. I mean,
cool.
man, I'm not even brave enough to put them things on, knowing some people can't even take them off.
So I was a little bit worried about that. I'm like, if I put these on, I can't take them off before the race. This is gonna be a big problem. But
all eyes must have been on you when people have been seeing you. What was that attention like? Was it like, yo, I look crazy in these boots?
Oh yeah, you look absolutely ridiculous, right? Like there's no way around that. They're cool and everything, but you look ridiculous.
Were you sweating knowing you look ridiculous, or are you sweating knowing like, yeah,
no,
I did that?
I think it's one of those deals. You wear them kind of knowing you look ridiculous, but it's cool at the same time. It gets attention. Speaking of the boots, I took them off for Talladega and I haven't seen them since. And I guess my brother took them from Talladega, and
What you got?
I'd honestly be mad about it, but he brought me Wendy's. So I can't even be mad.
Right on time.
I can't even be mad. Oh, I was starving.
I mean,
oh,
Get down with these nuggets.
I can't believe you wore those things.
oh, I can't believe I wore them either. But
Well, looks like you don't own them anymore because
honestly, I'd be really disappointed about it. Like he took my shoes, but he brought me a biggie bag. So I guess we're even now.
So on that note, I think it's right about time we wrap up the podcast because looks like it's dinner.
I think it's dinner time.
So Joe, we appreciate you coming out. For anyone that wants to follow you on social media, could you plug your socials?
Yeah, so Joe Graf Jr. on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram as well. And super happy to be out here, guys. Thank you.
No, I appreciate it. Always a pleasure meeting up with you. Hopefully get to catch you at one of your races this year. And if you guys like this episode, Eat, Sleep, Race podcast, make sure you like, comment, subscribe on whatever platform you're watching on.
And also share.
And also, most importantly, share, drop a comment. And if you want to follow us on our socials, at Hugo ESR, at Brian ESR, catch you on the next one.